and welcome the group, and then I will turn it over to you.
Thank you everyone for making it today, and this is a great opportunity for all of us in the education of IIMC. It was really great to watch the video, so thanks for all your great input. I really appreciate everything that you've done, and also I wanted to thank Elizabeth for chairing and taking notes last time. So I'm very appreciative, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this. It's very important for IIMC. So let's start off. Sherry Pierce is here, the newly elected or president-elect, and we'd like to hear her feedback on what she's really thinking about the Beyond MMC and where we should go from here. Thank you. Welcome, Sherry.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Wow, look, I get to see all your faces I haven't seen forever. Peggy, you're in the dark. Turn on your lights.
I would have to shut my blinds, and we get such rare sunshine here that I can't bear to do that.
Okay, you have an excuse if you've got sun. I haven't seen that for a long time either. So I listened again this morning to the recording of your meeting, and you know, that was awesome to be able to do that. So having that ability to go back and listen to what you guys discussed was really helpful for me. And I think that Dawn pretty much summed it up as far as my feelings on this program. I mean, and those of you that have, you know, been around a long time with this, as Tammy said at your last meeting, you know, we've been kicking this around forever. And I'm just, this is my number one goal, is before I get off the executive board, you know, I'm saying I'm going to get it done. But if I don't, I'm sure that Pamela will, you know, pick that up and make sure that we get it brought to fruition. But I don't even want to talk about that. I want to talk about that we're gonna have something hopefully in place. So we, as you know, Dawn and I put that proposal together for the board. The board was supportive of that, and my request was, and the Region 9 directors, was to get this before you to take a look at it, so you guys could toss it around and come up with some recommendations. And I know that's a really tall request, a big request for you, but I'm confident that the people sitting on this committee, you know, can do that, and it will have some sort of a report back to the board in May. Doesn't give you a lot of time, but we've got things to work with here. As Ashley discussed, and she did a really good job of updating you kind of on where we've been with this. We had the recommendation from Dr. Long, and in my personal opinion, I did not support that. I thought it was very complex. It was very expensive. It was, I think that she had the idea correct as far as the type of leadership sessions that we would be looking at. But other than that, I think we kind of missed the mark again. So I know you guys took a look at that. We then sent this to the education task force that we put together. And I'm going to be totally blunt with you. I know, Peggy, you served on that committee, but I kind of felt after reading this that the Beyond the MMC was sort of an afterthought. There wasn't a lot of thought put into the recommendation. So again, we just kind of touched the very tip of the iceberg there. So I'm throwing my faith in you as the education committee to take a look at this and see what you think. My idea is that let me back up. Don and I joined the California CCAC board, board of, what's their board of directors, correct, Don? Yeah, yesterday morning. And we sort of laid out this, what we were doing with the Beyond the MMC, just to get their feedback. And the feedback that I received from Anthony, who's the president, is that this program won't mean anything unless we require it to be a recertification program. So again, it's totally optional that once you have your MMC, it needs to be optional that you decide to enter into this Beyond the MMC program. But once you do, you need to, hopefully you will expect that you will need to recertify in order to keep this certification, because this is solving a problem for us. Those that have obtained their MMC are not able to get funding for training. They're being denied access to their state conferences, to the IIMC conference, to even some online training if there's a cost involved. So this, this is a problem. We have these clerks out there that have obtained their MMC, and now they're being denied the opportunity to pursue, their education, and that's just wrong. So what I'm looking at is specialized, training, maybe a specialized field of study. And what I was thinking about the other day is we have a lot of clerks that are facilitators and trainers at our IMC conference, for our state conferences, academies. And maybe this is an opportunity for those clerks to get some specialized training, and to, when someone's looking for someone, a clerk to be a presenter or a facilitator, or another municipality has a problem that they're dealing with and they want a clerk could come in and facilitate and help to solve that problem, they would have some specialized training in that. And so these are kind of my ideas. Don't know what we're going to call this. Don't know, if that someone that receives the certification will have a AE behind their MMC, or however we're going to designate that. Those are kind of the finer details, but I believe that a municipal clerk that chooses to enter into this program, that there's something that they will get out of this, and will, they'll want to stay in the program, and they will want to recertify and keep this designation. I know in Region 9, there are some advanced education programs that have been already put together that can be adapted for this. The Northwest Clerks Institute has a PD4 sessions that Joan Tilton puts on. And then I think Pamela in California also has some technical courses. So those can be adapted. Let me take a look at my notes, and then I'll shut up and let you guys ask questions. There was a little bit of pushback from one of the board members at mid-year, in that they were concerned that we were moving forward without an education director on board. And they wanted to wait until we had that person on board so that they could take a look at this. And my pushback to that, and thankfully the board supported this, was that we don't want to recreate the wheel. And when you hire a new education director, they come on board and they're very eager, to take something on. And I want to have the bones of this in place so that the new education director can help us, but not, take us back to square one. That's not, and that's my fear, okay? So I want to move forward as far as we can go before that education director gets on board to help us push this through. So I see this as a 50-50. So maybe 50% of it is in person. And I know that's obviously difficult now with COVID, but we're not going to be in this situation forever. I see, 50% maybe we could do online, and 50% needs to be in person, attendance at in person at some conferences or in-person training. So I think that this type of these leadership courses and some of the maybe the facilitator courses, those really need some one-on-one interaction as far as training goes. So I'll shut up and I'll take questions.
Sherry, can I just note that I just want to share with you, the City Clerks Association of California did support this, but one request came up, and that was in order to make this program available to clerks who have limited or no funding, we need to make this affordable. So the $200 fee that was thrown out there in the proposal may not be the right amount. So just keep that in mind as we work through this.
Yeah, and we just plugged a number. We plugged a number in there that was not, totally unreasonable, but we just need to try and plug a number in there that, so that's not a hard, fast recommendation.
Does anyone have questions for Sherry while we have her on the line? I'm not sure. Sherry, do we have you for the rest of the meeting, or do you have to pop off? Okay. So does anybody have questions for Sherry while we have her and while we're on the topic? Peggy, go ahead.
So I would have to say that I totally support the concept of continuing education. I think that Sherry, you and Don know that that's been something that I've supported for years. And I also support the idea of somehow there being a requirement, if you will, for people to continue their education, because that's what's going to give a lot of our supervisors the motivation to send us to training. I don't know, I get completely hung up on how it would be organized. I think that, Sherry, you had some good ideas. Like here in Oregon, we are a part of the Northwest Clerks Institute, and we have a level 4 institute, if you will. So that's sort of for people who are either working on their MMCs or maybe they're not. But in any event, I think those types of classes could be kind of altered to fit this, these requirements. I think it could be something like we could call it continuing clerks education, like our attorney has to get continuing legal education credits. We could have a certain number of credits that we have to get every so often in order to, I guess, recertify. I think that might be one of the big hangups from the old timers, is that there seem to be a lot of people who were opposed to recertification. I don't remember it being a big argument, but I did get a message from somebody who's on this group who said, oh, don't you remember what a big argument recertification was? But in any event, I totally support it. I'll do whatever I can to help, organize it and make it work and support it, because I think we need it. If we don't have it, we're going to continue to be in the same position that many of us are in right now. I'm not in that position. I'm really fortunate. But a lot of people are not allowed to go to training because they've already gotten their certification and their supervisors see no need for it.
Can I respond just to quickly, Ashley? So Peggy, the recertification question. So I think that the pushback was from clerks who had already obtained their MMC or their CMC, and that they were now being told that, the rules might change and they would have to recertify. And so I get that anxiety there. This program, when you go into the program and it is totally up to you, it's totally voluntary, when you enter, you know that up front that you will be required to recertify. So if you choose, you don't have to do this,
Yeah,
know, the choice. So you going in, you'll know that you have to recertify.
I think that, thank you for clarifying that, because I think that will make a big difference, at least with the people who I know who might be concerned about it. I mean, I didn't see it to be problematic necessarily, but I especially don't see it to be problematic if it's optional. And I like the hybrid approach, because I mentioned this the last time. I can't imagine all of us going back to in-person training all the time. I mean, don't you like to train in your pajamas? Me neither, but
I'm a people person, Peggy. So I'm not good at online training, but it works. And so, yeah, I fully support that being part of this program, but.
Sherry, I saw Jennifer Carfagno's hand. Jennifer, go ahead, unmute for us.
Hello. My only thought on the mandatory in-person is it might be more feasible for those who don't have the money to be able to attend online and not have the additional cost of hotels, meals, and those sorts of things. So I'm not in favor of it being 50% in person.
I won't move on that. Again, this is an optional program, but the purpose of it is for people, if they want to attend their state conference, and I don't think there should be a requirement that you should have to attend an MMC conference or anything like that, but within your state, within your region, I think that there should be some in-person requirements for training. So that, if somebody can get in the car and drive for a couple of days and attend a 2-day session, 2 or 3 days, I think that that's feasible. And again, when you enter into the program, I think that that's something you need to be aware of.
I think to help with the conversation too, this is all kind of semantics, if you will. So we're not going to be able to flush out in person, online, until we have an idea of what it is. So in terms of when we're talking about in-person learning, we have talked about, or even online, we've talked about a couple of different things during our last meeting and this one as well. We have to remember that not every state, not every country that IIMC works with, we are international, has an institute. So if we're looking at association level programming, institute and academy level programming, are we looking at IIMC conference? So when we talk about in-person, I think it would be best, just to help keep us on track, if we work out what type of program we're looking for, and then determine who's actually going to be implementing that. Is it the institute directors? Is it our associations? Is it IIMC going to be able to do that? Because we can sit and talk about online versus in person, but if it's all 100% driven by institute directors, we are leaving out states, countries, provinces that do not have institutes. So while it's important to think about the delivery method, it may behoove us to step back and figure out who's going to be delivering it first before we determine the in-person versus online. When we looked at Beyond the MMC with the institute directors before, we had a very mixed set of reviews on it from the IDs. Some were saying, yes, we can absolutely deliver something like this, but how do we ensure quality control across the board? We also had institute directors that said, I can't take on another program. I can't do anything. Good luck, IIMC. You guys are welcome to do something on your own. Let us know if you need assistance. So just for the sake of today's conversation, online versus on land, we definitely need to have that, but we may need to just figure out who's going to be delivering it. What are they delivering first? So just a little bit of help to guide the conversation. Janice Bates, I know I saw your hand pop out with Jennifer's too, so go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay, so I wasn't on the call the last time, but I listened to it earlier today. And what kept coming up to me over and over again was that we are a professional organization and a professional association. And so I think a lot of clerks have the idea or the problem that they're just a secretary and they're not seen as anything more than that. And so I think what we really need is to get buy-in from other organizations and associations that we are worthy. So like every year, call it continuing education, like an attorney, they have their JD. That is their pinnacle. There is nothing higher than their JD, but they keep going back and they get their continuing education, so they maintain their JD. But they are seen as a professional in their field. Even cosmetologists have to go in the state of Ohio and renew their cosmetology license. There is nothing like that for a clerk, and we handle so much stuff. Legal, confidential, you name it, we are responsible for it, but we're not seen on that same level that we understand and that we know these things. I think first, not only before we go beyond the MMC, we need to get some credibility in the field so we are understood that we do know what we're talking about and that we are a credible force. That's my first thing. And then my other thing is that I believe Sherry had mentioned that this would be a totally optional program, but if you think about it, so is the CMC and the MMC program. So, you know, yes, I also have my MMC and I love to continue to go and you know, if I attend an Athenian as a student, I will still write the paper, even though I'm an Athenian fellow and even though I'm a facilitator, I will still do that because that helps me grow. I think that's where we need to go to be seen as credible and that we bring something important, just like those attorneys, that continuing education credit or something. I think that's where we need to go just a little bit more to massage this a little more. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks, Janice. Let me see. I just saw Angie Johnson's hand, but I think I saw somebody before that, and whoever it was raised. Peggy, go ahead, Peggy.
So I completely agree with what Janice just said. You know, one of the things that I was thinking is, couldn't we just have a recertification program and have the ability to get educational points, the educational points that are required in the very same way we are doing it, we would be doing it if we were working on our CMC or MMC? That would take a big burden off of IIMC and our institute directors. I mean, because the people would still be able to get their educational points by attending the institute. They would still be able to get educational points perhaps by attending their state conferences or the IIMC conference. I mean, that seems like the simplest way to do it is to have the continuing education program, whatever you want to call it, set a number of recertification points and say, this is how you're going to get it, and essentially have it be the same way we're getting them now.
Peggy, clarify a couple of things for us with that thought. Do you see this as being recertification that's voluntary for CMC and MMC? Do you see this something recertification for MMCs only? And then thinking about when would something like this go into effect? Because the problem with original recertification is that it was blanketed across everybody. So regardless of when you got your CMC, it could have been in 1982, you now had to recertify in the year 1999. So when we look at recertification, would it be something that applies to everyone who gets certified after X date, after 2022, moving forward? Or do you see it happening right immediately across the board? Just clarify a couple of things for us.
Well, I mean, I thought it would be completely optional for people. I mean, not that it would apply to everybody. It would just be, and I certainly didn't mean to misspeak that way because that seems like it might cause a revolt. But I mean, I would think that it would be optional for whoever wanted to do it. Now, I don't know why an MMC would want to recertify. It's hard for me to envision that when they can work toward their MMC. but I can completely, and maybe it should only be for MMCs. What do you think, Sherry?
Well, I think Peggy, what you get is you get the pushback of you know, that wasn't the rule when I obtained my MMC, that I had to recertify. So what I'm trying to do is avoid that fight. I am trying to avoid the, you know, recertification fight. So by making this a program that is a little bit different than the MMC, again, where you get maybe into some specialized training or fields of study. But I just think that we're going to be wrapped up around the wheel in this fight over having to recertify for existing MMCs or CMCs.
Well, aren't we only talking about recertifying if you want to? I mean, on a totally voluntary basis?
Yeah, but what does that mean, I guess? To me, I don't know.
I know what you're saying. I mean, because there's not a lot of incentive there. It's like, okay, I really want to go to this training because I need to recertify, and then you can perhaps hear pushback from your supervisor. Well, you don't really need to recertify because you're not losing anything if you don't recertify. You're only gaining the advantage of getting to, you know, get further education. But I mean, I totally support the concept of continuing education. I wish it was easier than this, but I thought that initially somebody said that it was going to be a voluntary thing.
I think I have Angie. Go ahead, Angie, and then we'll address Tina's question in the chat box. I think for those of us that haven't been around for very long in terms of IIMC time, that we need to clarify that recertification a little bit better. But go ahead, Angie.
Okay, so it sounds like that we're either going back to recertification or trying to recertify and not thinking of a more broad perspective as beyond the MMC. It sounded like Sherry wanted to do specialized fields of training. So possibly you could do an advanced education merit program where you do your specialized field of training, if it's leadership or if it's facilitation or whatever tract it may be, that's beyond what we have learned prior with the CMC and the MMC. So, because the way I see it is, if we're wanting it to be something that's a little bit different, but still providing education that will be beneficial to all of our municipalities, towns, villages, whatever it may be, counties, that sometimes once you get past the content that we all had to learn to do our jobs effectively, now we need to become a better leader or a better facilitator or a better problem solver or you know, in a different type of field that we can utilize our skills that we have in our back pocket for the last 20 years, but we can also now start becoming a better leader within our community or go beyond if you choose to further your career, I guess is what I would say. That's how I see it. I'm not really sure if I'm missing the boat, but if we would focus more on what exactly our content would be, I think it would be easier to determine what delivery points we may want to focus on. And then at that point in time, you could do, okay, so say you do the merit for leadership, you got that merit. Then you do a merit for facilitation. So as you're building your merits, your knowledge base is much larger and your educational accessibility and what you do and you can bring to the table are so much broader. Now, I don't know if I'm missing the boat, but I think that that would be an easier way to view it as a broad viewpoint.
Thanks, Angie. I know I had Tammy up. I also see Janice. So let's go ahead with Tammy first.
I'm I guess I'm interested in what all you have to say, because I'm sitting here thinking that this whole this whole desire is wonderful. I've had my MMC since 2003, but voluntary doesn't get you anything if you're trying to help IIMC as a business. And I think we have to remember that this is an association that provides our core piece is providing education and a certification program. And I think that's the number one offering that drives people to IIMC. And as Janice said, that certification program needs to be seen as a very elite piece of education, certification that is after your college degree. This is specialized training that goes on for your entire career. And it should not be any different than your chief building inspector, who has to have so many hours of certification, and your law director, who has to have continuing education. There should be a continuing education component for us. And Sherry, I know you don't want to have that fight. And maybe you put in a grandfather clause that beginning with, the 2021 entries to the MMC program, and thereafter, they will all need to have continuing education points. And every other year, every 2 years, every year, whatever you want to make it. But that's the simplest way to attack this issue and to keep people engaged. Now, people like myself who are on this committee and who have continued to get other education is because that's the type of personality that clerks are. We just, once we finish one thing, we're looking to get something else. The Athenian program, becoming facilitators, going through leadership programs, whether they're through IIMC or our chambers of commerce or, a local piece. That's what we do. Is adding a new component with all of these triggers to become a parliamentarian, to become, a registered speaker, where you can go out and speak to, get your name on a list and all that good stuff. And there are lots of other certifications that you can get, and we have some partnerships with those. Is that the easiest way to add another component? But just like Elizabeth's survey said, there are clerks who are near retirement who are not going to touch this. And if you make any part of it voluntary, it has to be for just those in their last 5 years of service. But everybody else, from a certain point forward, I feel that's the way you carry IIMC forward, and you keep membership, and you keep people coming back, and you give them, which is one of your goals, the necessity to have their communities, their municipalities, pay for the education. If it's required, then those municipalities are going to have to send you somewhere. So I know that's a hard conversation, but for me, that's just getting down to brass tacks.
No, it's not, Tammy. And I agree with you 150%. That, and if that's the recommendation that comes out of this committee, I would be ecstatic with that. I do, I agree with you 100% that that would be the easiest and the best solution to this. But it needs to mean something, and it needs to require that you recertify every 2 years, or there needs to be, it's not a race. And I'm going to be frank with you guys. I have watched that, like, some of these programs become a race to get these certifications. And I watched my deputy do this, and she's very good at that. And she, did the majority of her work through online programs. And, I think a lot of this has become meaningless. And so I agree with you 100%, Tammy. If that's the recommendation that comes out of this committee, that we could do that and get people on board, that would be fabulous. But it needs to be a continuing recertification process to keep that designation, to keep people moving forward, and not just a race to get another certificate.
Well, and I think I said it last time, and I'm not going to be as eloquent today, just because I'm going to throw it out there on the fire. When I started, you could not move forward to the next level for 2 years. So to get your CMC took 8 years. To get your MMC, well, it was even, took time. And the whole premise behind that was because this wasn't supposed to be, as you say, a race. It was supposed to provide you with long-term education for your career. And you were meant to, enter into each one of those levels through time. And we have become an instant gratification society. I love Amazon. I like getting my packages in 2 days, and it makes me mad when it takes a month from somebody else. But for this, it also, again, goes back to the fact that, we're a business. What keeps our members in our pocket? What are we offering that makes them pay those dues and makes them remain a member and keeps them chugging along? And what do we do to get the nod from our municipalities to pay for all of those things? And I think that's, for me, that's the core. If we can come out on the other side, keeping that in mind, I hope that then it will fall in place and it will help IIMC for the long term. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy.
Yeah, and that goes back to what Janice was saying as well about, we're professionals, and we need to, have that continuing education, just like every other professional, or like many professional who are
Okay.
required to get certified.
So we did have a suggestion, private message in my chat box, that maybe we remove the word recertification, simply because it has such a negative connotation in IIMC's history, that maybe we just dump that word altogether. It's completely possible. Somebody mentioned continuing clerk education, CCEs. We have CEUs, CLEs, everything that you can name it, except, like somebody said, CCEs. So maybe for the sake of the conversation and to keep it out of that bubble that recertification puts us in, maybe we try to refer to it as something else, keeping it in that positive spin. With that in mind, is there anybody that's completely against this concept, or that has a different perspective on it, a different voice, I know I saw a couple of heads shaking as we were talking about requirements, as we were talking about access to education. I know there was a chat in the chat box from Shelley also that not every clerk has the same access to training. So anybody want to unmute? Shelley, I want to give you the first go if you want it. And then Pamela, I saw your hand as well.
Thanks. From a municipality, as Janice said, that, you know, you're just a secretary. There is very minimal training regardless of what my CMC or MMC level is. They're not going to increase my training or conference budget just because IIMC requires me to do more. So it's a struggle in a state that doesn't have an institute or an academy or an association to even attain the CMC. I'm working hard now to try to get some points towards MMC, and it's going to take me more than, you know, as Tammy said, it's going to take me more than 2 or 3 years to get that MMC in the position that I'm in. So when you're talking about budgets and forcing your municipality to pay for you to do some more training, you have to look at it from the other end too, from the municipalities and the clerks who don't have access, regardless of what IIMC is going to try to require. So it's going to kind of hold us down while you're trying to you know, raise up others.
Thank you, Shelley. Appreciate the input and the feedback. I had Pamela Smith. Go ahead, Pamela.
I really like this idea. I will tell you that it took me exactly 10 years to get my MMC. Not like it is for younger city clerks who are trying to rush through it. There wasn't any online training 100 years ago. However, I think we really do, I see you laughing, it's true. I think we have to be really careful when we make mandatory CCEs or CCUs, whatever you might want to call it. We've got to offer it in a way that gives clerks, wherever they are, the ability to do something online or do it in person at their state academy, but it has to be at a really higher value than what we're receiving now. We need to prove to our city managers, which seems to be the stickler, of allowing us to put in our budget, not necessarily travel, but education dollars. Because now we can offer it online. Do I like to travel and I can't wait to do it again? Of course. But if I can sit at my desk at my leisure or at home and take these exemplary, stronger, at a higher level CCEs or CCUs, whatever we want to call them, then I think that's where we're going. And we also allow our younger clerks who want everything immediately to understand it isn't something you can get overnight. It's something you've got to work for. And maybe it's more than an hour, or maybe it's more than 6 hours, maybe it's 10 hours. But we are going to have to be very conscious. It can't be what we're getting now. It's got to be higher. It's got to be a college level course and maybe a paper at the end or a test at the end, because I need to show my city manager, yes, I have to get this class, but like the city attorney, I have to complete so much every year. I mean, I think that's where we're headed, to be called a professional clerk with a career rather than a secretary, because many, many clerks across the United States do not or cannot pat themselves on the back and make sure that they're called the city clerk rather than treated like a secretary. I've seen that in my career in many cities. I'm aggressive and hateful. You're going to call me what I've worked so hard to get. But a lot of clerks and a lot of younger clerks don't know how to do that. And maybe that's something we need to start teaching them, to take care of themselves in their own environment.
Thank you, Pamela. Oh, go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah, and I echo what Pamela just said, and Shelley, you know, listening to you talk about that, it just kind of hurts my heart, because I don't know, and this is something also that's really close to me, is I don't know how that we as an organization can help you or other clerks in your situation who maybe work for, you know, a municipal government that does not respect what you do and what your training stands for. And so I think that that's another discussion, but I think it's an important discussion that we need to have. How can we help you be respected, you know, in your profession? And that's a huge need, because that also leads to education money. And as far as cost for travel and things like that, I would be more than willing to pound on the door of the foundation to ask and plead for scholarship money for this program, so that we can, you know, if it maybe just even requires one conference attendance, or IMC conference attendance, or one in-person type training, I would be more than willing to go and be the champion for getting that money. And I know Pamela would support that as well, so.
So what I'm hearing, and Angie, jump in and help me take notes and make sure we're at least capturing the spirit of the conversation here. What I'm hearing is that IIMC's committee right now is leaning towards the creation of a CCE, CCEU, something that IIMC would regulate, IIMC would define. I also have a private chat from one of our members too, saying that traditionally one CEU is 10 hours of education. So we would need to determine what the definition of a CCE is, if it's a direct one-to-one relation, or if it's a 1-to-10, 1-to-6, similar to the way that we run now. And that we would want to have that CCE be recertified every couple of years. And the time frame would be, correct me, this is where I'm a little fuzzy, but it would be if you're entering the CMC or the MMC program after a certain date, you would be entering under these new guidelines. So similar to the way we've had things in the past, to where it wouldn't be a blanket across everybody. It would be going in as of this date, you now move forward into this program, knowing that this is what you are committing to long-term. Is that what I'm capturing? Go ahead, Pamela, help me out.
Number one, I think we need to use, even in conversation, the word recertification. I heard that again because it's a stigma, and it's really easy to continue that. We've got to do something to help our clerks understand that they are not just a secretary in a position and have a job. When I usually talk to younger clerks, I want them to understand what I do is a career. It is a chosen profession. It is not the secretary that's going to go make a copy for the mayor, although I'll have a staff member do that. But it's very difficult when we're not brought up as women to treat ourselves as the professional people that we have the ability to be. So I believe that we need to try to make this an annual thing. You know, you go and do whatever, what clarifies or what certifies a CCE. I can't put this in the words. So if we have a CCE program, how are we going to deliver that? How are we going to make sure that we put a mandatory on it, like an attorney, but not using the word mandatory? I don't know what kind of wording they use, but to keep your MMC, you need to continue your education every year, not every other year, not every 5 years, but every single year. Maybe you can't go to an IIMC conference. Many clerks can't. But by us pushing out committees on Zoom, by us having things on Zoom because of COVID, it has led us to believe we can do more in a different way. And I would like to see us have that ability going forward. And I agree with Sherry. I'll work with her as hard as she is to get money, if we can possibly get it from the foundation, making it useful for clerks. But I'd also like for us to enhance it to the point that people like me who have their MMC would get excited, you know, not just say, because you've got your MMC, we're going to put a a date here so you don't have to bother. I think we need to get them excited so their cities will appreciate that they have continuing education to continue to be the professional that they are, if I'm making sense to anybody.
If you don't mind, I'm going to jump in. I couldn't agree with Pamela more. I too fight to make sure that people know that this is a chosen career. It drives me crazy. Being in the special districts, you often find that special districts, our role is called secretary of the board. Drives me crazy. So I couldn't agree more. I'm so on board with, I understand the recertification, the terminology. I wasn't around for why it would be such a fight. To me, it's not a fight. So I need to recertify. It's an expectation. And I would add that in California, I am astounded by some of the questions that come through on the listserv. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge advocate of the listserv, but I am shocked that clerks throughout my state that I see don't know answers to basic questions or don't have I think they think the listserv, and it is a resource for it, but it's astounding to me the simplicity of some of the questions coming through. We're doing it somehow, disservice is being done to these individuals that they can't answer basic questions about our jobs. And my number one, I have a course already in mind. There needs to be legislation. There needs to be every year an annual refresher on legislation, new legislation impacting us, because these questions, I fall out of my chair literally that I see the questions and I'm like, how does this person walking around with the CMC not know the answer to this question? And God love them, I want to help them. I'm right there. But like, I couldn't agree with Pamela more. This fight to validate our career and the importance of it and call us the right thing, give us the right education. Many of us are walking around with master's degrees now. I just have a bachelor's degree, and I see the youngers that, man, they're so educated and so brilliant. Let's give them this a career that has that same dynamic impact. So I love the idea of where we're going with this whole CCE or CCU or whatever we want to call it. And I think what we need to do is create a program that is right for our profession that might not be right for every agency out there. I am very fortunate to be with an organization that has a lot of money, and don't take that for granted any day. But like, I'm not allowed to travel out of state even before COVID. So that takes an exception from the board of directors. So, you can't really create something that's going to meet the needs of every municipality out there, but we need to create something that is right for 80% and that is right for our profession. And I think that things like the CCE, I've always had a hard time with the names that we've given these things, because like Beyond the MMC to me sounds like Buzz Lightyear. I have a nephew that's very into Toy Story. So I always think
we had to call it something, Tina.
I know, but like just I love where we're going with this. And I just that's my 2 cents is I think we need to be working towards something that's right for our profession and maybe trying to hit the 80% benchmark of agencies that can buy into it, and then try to help out the 20% that are going to be the oddballs with options to, if it's financial, if it's, that they can't attend an in-person IIMC conference, maybe they can attend as a little robot iPad rolling around. I don't know, but so I think that might be a good approach to it as we move forward.
Thank you, Tina. For the sake of everyone's time, we are getting to the end of the hour. I'm happy to keep the Zoom meeting open if we want to continue the conversation, but we may want to start thinking about any final questions that we have, at least for Sherry, while we have her on the call today. And then also really the direction that we want to take our next call in, and then the thoughts that we want to share in the next 2 weeks before we have that next meeting. So is there anything that we want to get clarification from for Sherry or anything else? I have Angie and then Tammy. Go ahead, Angie.
So Sherry, I guess I'm a bit confused. Is this a Beyond MMC type of direction that we're going, or are we including CMCs to get points or gain their accreditation through this?
So here's my ultimate goal. My ultimate goal is that municipal clerks who have obtained their MMC are able to continue their education, that they are provided funding, that their municipalities recognize that in order to either keep their MMC, or that there's another, that they're expected to continue their education. And so whether it's through an additional program, or as has been suggested here, that maybe we modify the MMC to require these continuing education. But my ultimate goal is that municipal clerks are not denied education because they've obtained this MMC designation after their name. And that's what's happening out there. And so, that's my number one goal here. And what that looks like, I'm open to you guys tossing this around and coming up with a recommendation. But I don't think we should limit it to, I don't think that solves the problem if you say that some people who have their MMCs, only clerks who are just obtaining their MMCs in the next year or whatever are required to do this. That doesn't solve this problem, because I have clerks that have held their MMC, like Tammy, for many, many years. And so these are the clerks that are saying, hey, my municipality is not supporting my ability to, get further my education, attend conferences, or take online courses or whatever. So that's my ultimate goal with this. And what that looks like, I'm not wed to an additional program, not wed to this, but we need the ability to, further our education. And that's not happening now.
Tammy, you want to go ahead?
I was kind of writing as we were going, like a letter to all MMCs. I'll share it, but that wasn't my question, but it'll lead into it. It was, dear MMC, you signed what did we all sign? Our oath.
Pledge.
Okay,
It's a pledge to lifelong learning.
Okay. You signed a pledge to lifelong learning when you obtained your MMC to continue your education. In order to assist you with this obligation, IIMC is now offering, however you want to, a continuing certified education program point system. And that's all the further I got. So it's kind of setting it, that kind of sets it up, leads us into then what the program becomes. And, for every year you'll need to submit 10 CCEs, if it's 10 on 10 or 8 or whatever. That's for the, if this is kind of what I was hearing us leading down to. So that's kind of the road that this conversation has led me to. My question was, when I raised my hand, was that Elizabeth sent us out this survey. And I thought that IIMC had kind of already surveyed our membership. Have we not done that? Has it been a while? Was the survey the same as what Elizabeth put together? And should or are we going to use her survey? Do we need to do that?
We surveyed sorry, Tammy, go ahead. We surveyed the MMCs, all MMCs that IIMC has record of that are still active in 2015. And that's the data that Dr. Long used over the last several years to put together the type of program that was presented to the committees before. So that one, 2015, the data was very inconclusive. It was very similar to what we got from the Institute directors in terms of, I'm totally not interested. I am close to retirement, not of interest to me. There's no money for me to do anything extra. Yes, I'd be interested, but I don't know what I'm interested in. So it was a really wide variety of data that came back with no real clear direction other than that there isn't a desire on a majority of the members surveyed that we need to do this and we need to do it now. So Dr. Long worked with what she had in terms of that data. If the committee would like to send out another survey, we can put together some questions similar to what Elizabeth put out, and we can run that by the Research and Resource Committee to make sure that we get their vetting before anything goes out. So it's completely 100% up to this committee what direction we would like to take in terms of gathering feedback. Any
Yes,
other
I'm not
thoughts?
sure that, Ashley, do you think, or Sherry, do you think that if we do another survey that we're going to get any different answers? Do you think it's going to kind of remain the same? We're just going to have this split.
I think that the answers,
have this split.
yeah, I think the answers may be different simply because the time in the world that we're asking these questions is very different now. A lot of them may be that when we were requiring more in-person learning and online wasn't an option, that no, I can't continue to go because there's no travel budget. So no, I'm not interested. But if there's a possibility for programming to be completed online, songs may change. So Sherry, what do you think in terms of surveying all of the MMCs that are currently in direction that we're taking? I don't know if we want to survey them with the same questions that Elizabeth asked. I feel like she gave us different data than what we're looking for now, but Sherry, weigh in, please.
So I don't object to that, but, and I don't see harm in doing that. But if the results that you get back are not favorable, if you have people saying, no, I don't, I've got my MMC, I'm happy, yada, yada, yada. I don't want to be forced to recertify, because that's a huge part of it is, are you willing to have us require that you recertify in order to keep your MMC? That's what we're asking for. If it's negative, then I don't want this to stop us then from going in the other direction and continuing to develop something for those clerks who do want that. And there we're back at the beyond the MMC model again. So that's just my caution, is that I don't want it to stop for those clerks who do want something where they can get points and further their education.
Thank you, Sherry. Janice and then Peggy, go ahead.
So I think if we do the survey again, we will get different answers. 6 years has passed, and we've gotten a lot of MMCs in that time. Like you said, it's not a race, but we have a lot of younger. I'm nowhere near retiring. I'm only 45. I still have a ways to go in my municipal career here, that I bet some of those responses are going to be different, because there's going to be a lot of people in my age group who aren't ready to retire, but who have their MMC, and now what? So I think there are going to be a lot of those changes in the responses. You're not going to get a lot of people saying, I'm about to retire and I don't care. I really feel like there's going to be different responses this time. That's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Janice. Go ahead, Peggy.
So I put this note in the chat. Well, first of all, I do think that the responses would be radically different this time for the very same reasons that a number of people have mentioned. There are a lot of young MMCs who have a lot of years to go, and they can't really be expected to sit around and not get any more training. So the note that I put in the chat was, why couldn't the MMC program be modified to include the requirement for continuing clerk education credits or units or whatever you want to call them, you know, every 2 years or every year or something like that. And that just become a part of the MMC program instead of your commitment to lifelong learning. Put something behind it by saying, yeah, every X number of years, you have to obtain this many continuing clerk's education credits, and just have it as a part of that. And I wouldn't say, if I ran the zoo, I wouldn't say, okay, it only applies to clerks who have obtained their MMC after X date, or who will down the road do it. But this applies to every single MMC, period.
Yeah.
But it seems like that would be a very simple way to do it. I mean, I'm sure nothing is simple with this, because honestly, it's a discussion that's been going on for so long. And I feel like there were times where my life was nearly in danger over just bringing up the subject. But I do, you know, I do think it's extremely important. I think it's important that we do it. It seems like the simplest way to do it would be to add a continuing clerk's education requirement to the MMC instead of the commitment to lifelong learning. Make it apply to everybody, and then just steel yourself for the pushback, because there's certainly going to be some. But you know, a lot of it is going to be from old timers, like the people that I grew up in the clerk's profession with. And you know, we're all going to be out of there pretty soon, and the new guys will have forgotten about it, but we'll appreciate it down the road.
Thank you all for your feedback today. Very different conversation than we had 2 weeks ago. So it's interesting to see directions and what time does to thought processes when we really sit on ideas. Thank you, Sherry, so much for joining us and getting involved in the conversation firsthand instead of just through the letter. Makes a big difference when we can hear from you. Is there anything else for the good of the order before we talk about direction? Any other final questions, final thoughts? Elizabeth, go ahead.
Yes, I had to step away for a moment, and when I came back, I heard you all discussing the survey. Is that something that IIMC is going to be doing, or is just discussing the possibility of doing? And I had that list of questions, survey questions that I was interested in putting out to the state association in Florida, but I didn't want to proceed with doing that without knowing if the IIMC had intention of doing something similar. Also, my understanding is that our state association is working on a certificate program as well. They have their own task force and education committee that is working on something. I don't know if it'll be separate from IIMC. I don't know what that all entails at this point. I don't know if that'll work. It'll complement whatever IIMC is, trying to do with this program.
Okay, well, to clarify, Elizabeth, we were actually talking about your survey and the questions that you asked. And I know we discussed the potential of sending out a survey, but I don't necessarily know that we all decided on that. So to wrap up our conversation, it would definitely be beneficial for us to determine if the next step in our process here is to put out that survey. And if so, we can look at Elizabeth's questions and maybe start there as a launching point and edit it over the next couple of weeks together as a group, and then determine, do we want to send that survey over to the Research and Resource Committee to disseminate? So if there's any other suggestions on steps where we go from here, please feel free to unmute, drop it in the chat. Dawn, I see you. Let us hear from you.
I think the survey is going to be helpful to give us some kind of direction moving forward so we can make a recommendation to the board, because I see two things here that we've talked about. Would you support an optional program? And then the question, would you support, we can't use the word recertification because I'm an old dinosaur and I remember that fight and it was not pretty. We need to come up with a different word, because the word recertification means to members, you're going to take it away from me when I already received my certification. So how dare you take it away? So we need to come up with something like continuing education. I support required continuing education. I totally support it, because to me, it devalues my MMC, because I am not held to the same standard that my city attorney is, where they are required to continue their education to keep that license. So to me, it would be more meaningful professionally. And I could, to my city manager, say, well, you're going to cut my budget by 10%, which is going to happen. My training budget's getting cut 10%. And so if I am required to continue my education, then I have that to give them as a carrot and say, okay, but I have to continue it somehow.
So maybe rather than, like we've all discussed and agreed upon, not the word recertification, maybe the second part to that question could be, would you support the creation of a continuing clerk education unit, something along those lines, definition to be determined, but would you support the creation or IIMC creating this new thing to help assist in the future development of education? So maybe we think about it from that perspective instead of would you support recertification? So what I'm hearing is that a survey is our next step. It sounds like that's where we want to go. So we need to work as a group to put together a couple of questions with IIMC surveys, and Karen, we have our communications coordinator here, would be responsible for helping us disseminate that once we work with the research committee. Karen, are you finding that no more than 5 questions would be beneficial for the survey, just to keep it quick, keep it short?
You'll get a greater rate of response if you
Okay.
keep it to 5.
Okay, so how do we want to go ahead or move forward on putting together these questions? Do we want to let our chair and our vice chair draft some questions? I know Elizabeth as vice chair had that foundation. Maybe we want to throw those out and edit those questions, or do we want to all think about it over the next couple of days, throw out some questions in an email chain, and what do we want to do? Any thoughts?
Well, I kind of want to get some feedback from Sherry a little bit on what her thoughts are on this, but what I'm kind of leaning towards maybe is we forward any questions to the chair, and then the chair could share with the committee. We got to turn this around pretty quickly though, and make this, like Karen said, make the survey very short, because members aren't going to want to spend a whole lot of time responding, but get to the point. The questions need to get to the point to give us the answers we need.
Agreed. Okay. Does that sound okay with everybody? If you think over the next, let's say 2 or 3 days, throw some questions over to Angela and Elizabeth, and then those ladies can put together a couple of ideas that we can look at again as a group before we send that out. Does that sound like a plan? Okay, so let's say by Monday, is that fair for everybody? It is Wednesday. By Monday, we have some questions over to Angie and Elizabeth. And then ladies, we can all put together a draft of a document and send it back out to the committee to have them look at those final couple questions and nail down which ones we want to send out. Does that sound like a fair game plan? Yeah. Okay.
And Ashley, I just want to reemphasize that when you're sending this out, that this would be it would be required in order to maintain your MMC. That needs to be made very, very clear. This isn't just another, letter you might get behind your name, or I don't want there to be any confusion that this would be a requirement in order to retain your MMC when you're asking these questions, so they understand that.
Okay. Well, we will make sure the final version that goes out, that it's crystal clear on what it is that we are asking. I did have a couple of questions for Elizabeth with her questions when I looked at them, and there was certain wording that we would need to update. So as a group, once we get all those questions together and everybody puts their thoughts on paper, we can sort through and narrow down and make sure they're crystal clear. Is there anything else before we end conversation today? No? Okay, again, Sherry, thank you for joining us. Valuable opinions, great conversation. Hopefully you enjoyed your time with us for the last hour.
Yeah, happy dance.
Perfect.
I'm happy.
Perfect. All
Thank
right. Well, send those emails over, get those over to Angela and to Elizabeth. If you want to continue that group chain that I have in there, that way we just reply all, that would be wonderful. Sorry to bombard your inbox with questions, but it'll keep us all on the same page. I will also take the recording that Karen is doing for us today and send that out as soon as it's ready. That way the rest of our committee members who aren't with us today will all be on the same page and know what they are tasked to do as well. So I will probably send that out tomorrow. Be on the lookout. If you need anything, please let me know. Otherwise, our next meeting is scheduled same day, same time, 2 weeks from now, which I believe takes us to February 3rd. So if there's anything you need between now and then, please let me know. Otherwise, have a really good rest of your week and we will talk questions next week.
Thank you, everyone.